Hey guys, Haz here at Shield K9, and today I'm going to talk about pit bulls. This is a topic, there's a lot of obviously discussion and arguments about pit bulls as a breed. These are dogs that are banned in a number of municipalities. They have quite a history, and they have their rabid fans and their rabid opponents. So let's talk a little bit from a dog training perspective and a dog behavior perspective about the pit bull. Obviously, this dog here, he's not a purebred pit bull. Purebred pit bulls are probably few and far between in this day and age, but he's a pit bull type dog, so I'm going to use him for the video. Anyways, I think in order to understand the pit bull and what kind of companion and what kind of dog it is to train, you kind of have to understand a little bit their history. All right, and again, I understand that these dogs are maybe a little bit removed now from their history, especially depending on the specific dog that you have, but that history is there to some degree, greater or lesser, in all the dogs. So what were these dogs originally bred to do? They were not bred to be nanny dogs, as some people would like you to believe. These dogs were bred to be fighting dogs. They fought for people's entertainment, they fought each other, they fought other animals. They've been used and are currently being used for things like hunting, boar and so on and so forth. And the use of these dogs obviously informed the breeding, okay? And these dogs were bred a very specific way. And we have to understand that genetics, I know I'm talking about genetics again, but genetics play a huge role in the temperament and the behavior of the dog in this day and age. So, as we already know, many generations removed from their fighting background. In many cases, there are still some people that are keeping those lines alive and actually are fighting the dogs or using the dogs on wild pigs and so on and so forth. And those are called game-bred pit bulls, okay? Now, what you have to understand about those lines is those dogs were inbred. And I know a lot of people are going to clutch their hearts, oh no, inbreeding's terrible. It's not terrible. Inbreeding isn't the problem, especially if you're inbreeding for functional working traits, which is what they were doing with the dogs. It makes dogs, if you know what you're doing with inbreeding, you end up with dogs that are very typey, okay? They're very specific in their look, and they're very consistent in the behavioral traits that they express. So if you're looking for hunting dogs, if you're looking for police dogs, if you're looking for fighting dogs, there's any good breeder is doing, inbreeding in a selective and smart way. Now, obviously, in this day and age, for a dog, to be in your family, the traits of a fighting dog might not be so good for you, okay? Now, I know it's been many, many generations since they were bred like that, but that's still back there, and it's very concentrated blood, right? Because they were inbreeding for specific traits. They were inbreeding on dogs that would survive 3 to 4 hours in a ring fighting another dog, not giving up, being able to withstand the pain and the pressure and the exhaustion of that experience and still staying game, as they call it, okay? And then the same thing, whether they were used in bull baiting, hog baiting, hunting wild pigs, this kind of stuff. They were breeding for very specific traits, aka gameness. And when we talk about gameness, everybody has, again, their own definition, but it's basically the dog's ability to overcome adversity and stay in the fight, so to speak, okay? So, obviously, this is something that you need to be aware of if you want to take one of these dogs into your home to be a pet. And the reason why I'm talking about this is not to trash pit bulls, okay? It's to educate. Because I think the worst thing you can do with the pit bull terrier or with any breed is to lie. And what people try to do is they try to lie about what the dogs are in order to kind of distance the dogs from maybe their dark past, so to speak, and to put a nice light. It's not the breed, it's the person who raises the dog. No, I'm sorry. The person who raises the dog isn't going to change the genetic makeup of the dog and the behavioral traits that creates. Okay, now I know there's going to be a lot of people, oh, I had this pit bull and it was great and it looked after my kids and so on and so forth. That's fine. I'm not saying that those things don't exist. I'm saying that in order to understand why the breed has the reputation that it has and does the things that it does that end up in the news, and that's not looking after kids, that's not why they end up in the news. They end up in the news because they attack children and they attack people sometimes, and they kill other dogs. This is why they end up in the news. It's very few times is it actually a nice story as to why the pit bull ended up in the news, or pit bull type dogs, let's say. This is what we're dealing with when it comes to the dog. And I think a lot of these issues happen because people are unrealistic about the breed. There's nothing inherently bad or good about them. They just are what they are. They are what we made them to be, okay? Now let's talk about what specific traits you need to be aware of in the pit bull terrier. And again, this is generalities. There are exceptions to every rule. Number one, they tend to be quite socially sensitive. And by socially sensitive, I mean as the handler, they're pretty sensitive to what the handler wants. Or they're pretty sensitive if the handler gets a little bit upset with them. So if I say, hey, most pit bulls are pretty sensitive to that. They immediately kind of show a suppression in their behavior when you do that. Okay, that's good, but it's also can be bad depending on what you're doing in your training. They also tend to be a combination, and this is where I think a lot of trainers struggle with the pit bull terrier. They have very low thresholds for arousal. So that means it doesn't take much to get them to go from 0 to 100. And when a pit bull goes to 100, the vast majority of them, it's really hard to get them back down to planet Earth from there. And that's usually, when they're in a state of arousal, is usually when something bad happens. And that's what people don't really understand. They're like, he's so sweet, I love him, he loves me, he cuddles with us on the couch, and then he sees another dog and all of a sudden he's super dangerous and he's trying to kill the other dog, and if we get between him and the dog, he's biting us, and so on and so forth. He's really good with the kids. All of a sudden the kids started running, he started getting really excited and aroused and intense, and he jumped on one of their friends and bit them, and it's like, you don't understand. These dogs were bred to have a low threshold for arousal. That's in their genes. Back however many generations, it's there, okay? And of course, like I said, different individuals express this trait differently, but they have low thresholds for arousal. So usually, there's a couple of things that can trip the switch, so to speak. Number one, pain. Okay, so you'll notice a lot of pit bulls get into fights with other dogs when they're playing. It starts as playing. Somebody goes a little bit too far. Maybe a few too many teeth are used. Maybe gets run into a little bit too hard, and all of a sudden you have a dog fight. Okay, so pain is a trip for arousal. Pain generated by the handler. So people are using a pinch collar, people are using an e-collar and trying to make the dog do something or not do something. When the dog is in a state of arousal, this can cause aggression, whether it's towards another dog or towards the handler or towards somebody else, right? So pain and speed, so I say speed, movement, quick jerky movements. So what makes quick jerky movements? Well, prey objects do, or prey animals do, okay? Like rabbits, squirrels, children, right? Children make quick jerky movements, and they tend to scream and run around, right? So that trips the switch and puts a lot of pit bulls into a state of arousal. It doesn't mean they'll necessarily attack, but it means they're more prone to doing something that you might not want them to do, okay? And high-pitched noises. I find with a lot of pit bulls, the high-pitched noises often will get them going, right? So, and again, you can understand why that might be based on their past and based on some of the current uses that they have, actual uses, not just being pets. Now, how does this affect you? Well, it means that if you want to bring one of these cute guys into your house, you got to be aware, that to some degree or other may be in the lines. Okay, maybe in your dog's past, whatever the past is, whether your dog's a rescue, whether your dog's, from a bully breeder. Nowadays, we've rebranded pit bulls. They're called bullies now, right? I know they're not bred for fighting anymore, but you've got the XL bullies and the micro bullies and so on and so forth. And some of them don't even really have pit bull anymore in there. But a lot of them do. So like a dog like this, I don't know what he's supposed to be. I don't know what we're calling him, to be honest with you. He's a very cute guy. He's a nice dog. He's the typical pit bull type dog that you might see out and about. But that being said, I train quite a few of these dogs, whether you call them bullies or pit bulls or pit bull mixes or whatever you want to talk about. I've trained more kind of game type dogs, and I've trained more, you can tell that they've been bred exclusively for their looks and for their musculature and their bone and their head. I train a lot of both types. And I see certain commonalities within this type of dog. So we can call them pit bull type dogs if you're a purist. So From a training perspective, these dogs can represent a little bit of a challenge because of that arousal issue. It can make a dog who's normally quite sensitive suddenly become extremely, extremely resistant to pressure. So whether it's pressure from a collar, a leash, a correction, if you don't know what you're doing with this type of dog, you can get somebody hurt, all right? Especially if you have a dog that has the behavioral issues that some of these dogs do have. Do I recommend these dogs as pets? I think, if you're picking the right type of dog, like Brick here, he's a fantastic dog as long as you manage him properly. He came to us with some arousal issues. He would get super aroused around other dogs, right? Is it because he's an evil dog or because he necessarily wants to kill them? No. It's just that he was never taught to deal with his arousal, which is genetic, in a healthy way. And that made him very difficult to control around other dogs or around exciting situations. And now he's learned that, he can control himself and how to kind of cope with arousal in a more healthy way. So with these types of dogs, these are not dogs that you should lie to yourself about. These are not dogs, you don't do the dog any favor, you don't do yourself or your family any favors by lying about what your dog is and is not. Understand your dog's history, understand that what genetics are possibly in the background of your dog and why your dog does what he or she does. Like I said, I deal with a lot of pit bulls or pit bull type dogs in my training here. We always have a few in here every month and always have a few in the classes and so on and so forth. And they all tend to have the same kind of issues and the same kind of pressure responses. They tend to be very sensitive to pressure and then all of a sudden very resistant to pressure. And that combination can mess up a lot of trainers, right? So that's something that you have to be aware of, and the solution is to condition the dog slowly and carefully to pressure, teach them the correct response, and prevent them from overstimulating, which is what a lot of trainers struggle with. They put too much on the dog and it actually makes the dog either redirect or the dog become more aggressive, or they put too little on the dog and then the dog learns to tune them out, and then you've basically got an uncontrolled dog. The good news with these dogs is they are handler sensitive. They care about their handler very much. Okay, so you can have a good impact on your dog's behavior without actually having to use too much physical force with the dog. All right, doesn't mean you shouldn't use physical force, but you have to be careful about how you use it, and that's where a lot of people screw up. So don't ask me, should I put a prong collar on my pit bull? Should I put an e-collar on? If you have to ask me that question, you shouldn't do it. Okay, you should seek out a professional that can help you with it. Are pit bulls good with kids? Some of them are, and some of them aren't. Right? You got to be careful. Because again, remember that arousal thing. If you have a dog that really struggles with arousal, it's generally not safe to have them around kids. If you have a dog that has good social stability and good stability even when they're aroused, then that's a good dog to have around kids. So this is a good breed if you know what you're doing, if you're going to put in the necessary training to help the dog be successful. And if you're not going to lie about what the dog is and is not, this is a good breed. Like I could live with this dog and we wouldn't have too many problems, right? If you are somebody who wants to kind of take one of these dogs and, oh, he's my fur baby and I love him and, he would never, then that's not the dog for you. Get a Yorkie. At least nothing bad can really happen with the Yorkie, but, except somebody gets pinked on the thumb or something. With these dogs, they have a lot of commitment when that arousal is tripped, which is why they generally can do a lot of damage to another dog or to a person if something triggers that arousal. I like to call these dogs are very like kind of Jekyll and Hyde, and everyone's like, oh, it came out of nowhere. It didn't come out of nowhere. If you were being honest with yourself and you were being honest about the breed and you were working with somebody who was honest with you about your dog, you would see that those behaviors don't come out of nowhere. These dogs don't attack from nowhere. These dogs, it's always arousal, right? And they show you a lot of warning signs generally before they do something bad. So the other thing with these dogs is I find, again, as with anything, when you start breeding them for looks, a lot of people kind of start to abandon the temperament a little bit. And that's where you see a lot of these dogs. They still maintain that arousal, but they carry a fair bit of nervousness because people are breeding them for looks, they're not breeding them for their character. So they're breeding dogs that maybe aren't so confident. So now you're getting maybe a dog that looks super, badass, so to speak, but isn't so confident, and he has an arousal issue. You can see how these things start to interact and we might have a problem. Do I think this breed should be banned? I don't think any breed should be banned. But I think we should go into ownership of a pit bull or a pit bull type dog with our eyes open and working with somebody. If you don't feel confident in your ability to train, or you aren't able to train one of these dogs properly, work with somebody that is. And understand them for what they are, and respect them for what they are, and you will never have a problem with them. And again, there's always individuals. There's individuals within every breed where it's like, you know, he got the genetic short end of the stick, right? Or maybe it's just for whatever reason, that one puppy in the litter just didn't turn out. There's some bad stuff there, and the dog is just not safe. And I've definitely run into those types of dogs, not just in the pit bull, but in other types of, even Dobermans and German Shepherds, and so on and so forth. But with the pit bull, that arousal coupled with the sensitivity and the overreaction and then the resistance to pressure, it all combines to make a little bit more of a challenging dog to train if you don't know what you're doing. So I think that concludes my little spiel on the pit bull. I like them. I think that they're generally nice dogs, but they're not for newbies generally, and they're a dog that you need to put in the time and the effort to train properly if you want to avoid problems. I hope that you guys like this clip. If you do, feel free to like, subscribe, comment below. If you disagree with me, if you agree with me, maybe you'll give me an idea for another video. Once again, I get my training pants from Eric. Eric USA, fantastic company. Use promo code SHIELD10 to save 10% off your next Eric USA purchase. They make training pants, hiking pants, vests, jackets, you know, all the things that you need for any kind of outdoor activity. Fantastic product made in Europe, and you know, I can't say enough good things about them. Thank you for watching.